Hi, my name is Stephen Kirsting, and in this video I want to discuss compositional guides, crop overlays in Photoshop and Lightroom, and why they don't matter at all and when they do matter. Alright, here we have the golden spiral, and the golden spiral is specific to a 1.618 ratio image. So the long edge here is 1.618 times longer than the short edge. And you start with a rectangle of that aspect, then we draw this line to make a square, and what remains is another rectangle of the same aspect ratio, 1.618. You continue doing that, so on and so forth, until it resolves at a point of focus. And then if we do that from all four corners, we wind up with these 4 points of impact and a different flow for each spiral. Then we have the golden triangle rule, which is simply another way of locating these same points by bisecting diagonal long edge and then coming off at a 90-degree angle to the other corner, and we get the same points of focus. And we do it from the other direction, we wind up with all 4 points of focus. So those are the golden spiral, golden triangle important points in a composition of a 1.618 aspect ratio. Then it also gives us the golden rule grid, which has these 4 points of importance, and I really don't know why they're not the same points of impact if it's based on the golden, except for they simply quit dividing out the squares or the rectangles at this point instead of continuing further in. The primary thing of the golden rule grid and the rule of thirds grid is these horizontal and vertical lines, and the basics of that is simply a dynamic imbalance or asymmetry. In all types of design composition, balance, perfect symmetry, is stagnant, and imbalance or asymmetry is dynamic. So the rule here with the grids, this one or the rule of thirds, is that you place important points, particularly horizon lines, dividing lines, those kind of things, on these horizontal or vertical lines. Alright, so we have all of those factors that only apply to 1.618 aspect ratio. And here I have it applied on a 3:2 aspect ratio, which is the closest standard aspect ratio we have commonly in photography to use. You can do whatever you want as far as what aspect ratio you create, but applying golden rule compositional guides to it is a bit of a stretch. In fact, it's about, on this, it's about a 7 or 8% error. A 3:2 is a 1.5 aspect. 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. Pretty close to a 1.618. Any other aspect ratio we normally have, a 5:4, 8 by 10, 7:5, 16:9, they're all going to be even greater errors. And at that point, you're kind of just making stuff up. But it really doesn't quite matter, and I'll show you why. So here's our point of importance here, and here's all the same points of importance using all the different guides, compositional overlays, for a 3:2 aspect. You can see this one's moved just slightly down, this one's moved just slightly down, and if we combine them all, we get this little buckshot pattern up in the upper left corner, or upper right, lower left, lower right. You get this little concentration. And that's why the compositional guides don't really matter that much. Let's go ahead and we'll look at how these all work out. Turn that off. Here's our 3:2. and I'll just go into the crop and we'll go with the overlays. Okay, so this is the golden ratio grid, golden spiral, rule of thirds, diagonal method. Now the diagonal method is a little different in that it says that points of interest will be placed on one of these lines, bisecting lines. And it's created by dividing this image up into a square or two squares and then drawing X's through those squares. So if I drew a vertical line here, I get this X on this side. Draw a vertical line here, I get this X on this side. So this was found recently, I think it's 2006 or something like that, from studying a bunch of artwork. It said that the vast majority of good artwork, prominent artwork, has the important points of focus placed on one of these lines. Not necessarily at an intersecting point, just somewhere on these lines. And it's very exact. It's within 2 millimeters. And I don't know how you judge within 2 millimeters unless you're judging the image at its final display size. But at any rate, it was meant more as an evaluation tool, but if a lot of great artists use it unconsciously, then maybe we can use it to help us consciously. But here's the thing, you never want to force a composition into some contrived, constrained compositional guide, but there's usually one that's going to be able to help you. So the first thing is set up an image, compose an image so it feels right. And then if you're going to use an overlay, a guideline, use it to tweak and refine your composition. Alright, let's see if we have any other overlays. Alright, there's the golden triangle, misapplied, and back to the golden rule. You can see we end up with this little buckshot pattern. And the same is true if we go to a 5:4 aspect. I'll change this to a 5:4. There's our golden rule, golden spiral, rule of thirds, diagonal method, and golden triangles. Definitely not golden triangles anymore. And you can see that our goldens start moving far apart. There's golden spiral, there's golden triangle, and they should be the same place. That's why misapplying them doesn't really make sense, but you can see that they all come into this tight little buckshot pattern, so it doesn't really matter. So when does it matter? Compositional guidelines are not just about placing a point of focus. They're also about flow through an image. And I'll use this example. It's a 3:2 aspect. And I'll switch to the overlays. And this is the one I used to refine this image. It's the golden ratio. Rule of thirds would be a little different. And what it does, and what I did, was I placed the horizon line, or the dividing line between the subject and its reflection, on the 1/3. This creates a larger area for the duck to occupy, which gives it more prominence, more importance. Creates a smaller area for the reflection, which reduces its importance, as well as pushes it closer to the periphery of the composition, which also reduces its importance. Placing the eye on this right 1/3, again, I've got more weight on the left side for dynamic imbalance. I have more room in front of the duck than behind the duck, which gives it room to move into so it doesn't feel cramped. And it gives roughly equal spacing between the duck on two adjacent sides. It's my personal feeling that anytime one side feels significantly tighter than adjacent sides, at least one adjacent side, then it's going to feel pinched on that side. Composition is going to feel too tight. So having at least two adjacent sides roughly equal in spacing gives a more balanced composition. And I have the same here. I have roughly the same spacing here as I have from the bottom. That all works, and I like the way this image is composed. Now I can completely disregard all the rules if I felt something resulted in a more pleasing image. Nothing wrong with that either. But it makes absolutely no sense for me to apply a rule like the golden spiral to this image. Here I've placed the point of focus at the golden spiral point of focus. I placed the eye there, and it makes very little sense. The composition is now constrained, much more centered, much more static. I've lost my dynamic imbalance, and I've cut into the reflection, which I liked. That makes no sense. At that point, you're just making stuff up. You might as well just do whatever you want, and there's nothing wrong with that either. Like I said at the beginning of this, the important thing is to compose an image that feels right, and then use compositional guides to help refine an image. And I'll give a couple examples of that. And taking these at liberty, this image is by Santosh, and this is as it was presented for critique. It's an image of sharks taken from overhead, and it's a really cool image. But it feels kind of congested, cluttered, random. And when I look at the image, this shark or this shark are the brightest, and they become kind of the point of focus. The greatest contrast kind of draws your eye, and that's not optimal. So what I did was I moved the image to a 3:2 type aspect, and then I used some dodge and burn, tone this shark down, brighten these guys up to kind of create that flow through the composition with contrast that follows the spiral and ends up close to the point of focus of the golden spiral rule of composition. Now, it does not matter how large the background, the black area is. We can make this image much larger with a black background. In this portion, we could still apply the golden spiral concept too. So again, the guidelines are not just about where to place important points, but they're also about flow through an image. Here I have an image that was posted by Josh for critique, and it has the bird very close to the side. Now this portion of the tail is not really important, but even if we go to about this point of focus or this point of focus, it's much tighter on this side than it is on any adjacent side. That makes it feel pinched. So we need to kind of balance that out, in my opinion. So in this case, what I did was I applied the diagonal method. I rotated the image so that this background line created a diagonal leading up to the eye, which is on two of these lines of importance. It created an additional diagonal line through here, also leading up to the subject, and it feels more balanced to me. I have greater room here. If we go to about this point here where contrast is good, I get about an equal distance here. I've got dynamic imbalance in the image. The bird's high in the image. Its weight is to the right side, more room on the left side. It just feels better to me than as it was originally posted. It's not to say this is wrong or this is right, or that the diagonal method was the best one to use. It's the one I felt worked best, and I think it creates good visual flow. And I also think it's taken this background line, which is a little bit of a distraction, and actually utilized it to where it now benefits the image a little bit. So to wrap it all up, you can do whatever you want. It kind of doesn't matter, because no matter what you do, all these points all wind up in this buckshot pattern off to one side. It doesn't matter if you're using the rule of thirds or if you're using the golden ratio. If you're using the grids, point is dynamic imbalance. If you're using another method or another compositional guideline, it's not just about where you place the point, it's about flow through an image. If I'm going to use the diagonals, then this is going to suit best with something that has diagonals or leading lines that will follow those diagonals, that resolve to this point. Alright, so main point, do whatever you want. The most important thing is that it feels right and gives you the results you want. If you're going to use a compositional aid, use one that is appropriate, not only for placement, but also flow through the image. Once again, my name is Stephen Kirsting. I hope this information is of benefit to you, and I hope you have a great day.